Good morning, co-chairs and honorable members. Before you this morning are members from our officials from ADMARC, led by the CEO, Mr. Makata. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you, honorable members, to almost our last day.
Good morning, co-chairs and honorable members. Before you this morning are members from our officials from ADMARC, led by the CEO, Mr. Makata. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you, honorable members, to almost our last day on the handling of cluster sessions. And we have our officials from ADMARC. But before we proceed, let's have a volunteer to lead us into a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we come before your throne to say thank you for the gift of life today. We thank you, we planned and you have made it possible. As we are about to start our meeting, we call upon you, Jehovah God, in the name of Jesus Christ, to be with us, grant us wisdom and understanding so that whatever we discuss should become beneficial to our nation. Guide our meeting, guide our leaders in this meeting, in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Honorable Vice Chair, for the prayer. As our tradition demands, it's important that we should know each other through self-introductions before we start our discussions, starting with the honorable members from.
Good morning, honorable co-chairs. My name is Esther Jolobala, Member of Parliament for Machinga East constituency, a member of Natural Resources Committee, and a member to this cluster. I thank you.
Co-chairs, I represent the people of Salima North. I'm known by the name Kapante Ngono, member of this cluster. Thank you.
Through your chair, I am Ramzan Juma Mohammed, MP for Sanje South. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable co-chairs, my name is Jeff Tamale, Member of Parliament for Nchinji Central.
Through you, co-chairs, good morning. I'm Joseph Nomale, representing the people of Chilazro East. Thank you.
Good morning, co-chairs. Through you, my name is Mavuto Bokosi, and I represent the people of Palombe North. Thank you.
Co-chairs, I'm George Katunga Million, MP, Palombe Central, and Vice Chair, Natural Resources and Climate Change Committee. Thank you, co-chairs.
Thank you very much, co-chair. I'm Mulem Chirapondwa, Member of Parliament for Nchisi South, Vice Chairperson of Agriculture and Irrigation Committee, and this morning I'll be co-chairing with my colleague here. Thank you very much.
And I'm Werani Chirenga, Member of Parliament for Chitipa South, Chairperson for Natural Resources and Climate Change, also co-chair for this cluster, which is a composition of members from two committees, Committee on Natural Resources and Climate Change and the Committee on Agriculture and Food Security. Secretariat.
Through you, co-chairs, Chikondi Chisenga, Parliament Secretariat.
Through you, Honorable Co-Chairs, my name is Annie Kanyangalazi, Parliament Secretariat.
Anyone else who has not introduced himself? Media, we want to know who is here. If you could just stand up and shout your name.
My name is Maria Bosco, representing Kasubi Radio.
Doris Janashi is representing Kasubi Radio as well.
I'm Beatrice Mwabe from MBC.
Thank you so much. Let's have self-introductions from official of ADMARC. Banasi will take us through the self-introductions.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chairs. My name is Daniel Makata. I'm the CEO for ADMARC.
Thank you, Co-Chairs. My name is Richard Kwadwani. I'm the Director of Finance at ADMARC.
Good morning, Co-Chairs. I'm Frederick Nyongan, Director of Operations at ADMARC.
Good morning, Co-Chairs. I'm Ethel Sirida Kaso, Director of Corporate Affairs at ADMARC.
I'm James Butao, Senior Accountant at ADMARC.
Thank you so much. We have invited you to appear before this cluster. You were supposed to appear, I think, last week, but it did not materialize because we thought that in the absence of the CEO, we were not going to get full information. So we are glad that today the CEO is around. We want you to take us through what you were funded last financial year, 2024 to 2025, how you used the funds, and how you intend to use the allocations that you have been funded in the 2025-2026 financial year. Thereafter, members will ask questions, seek further clarifications from you, but we would also want to find out from you the shortfalls and challenges that you have, especially in the 2025-2026 financial year. Your allocations, how you look at them, whether they're enough or not, and where you feel there are some gaps. You should present them to the cluster so that by the end of the day, we should be able to come up with a cluster report that fully represents not just your interests, but the interests of Malawians. Thank you so much. Hand over to you. My colleague is a vice chair for Agriculture Committee, so it would be very unfair for me not to let him give up his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair, and once again, welcome, CEO and your team. As a cluster, indeed, we actually wished so much that we should have you, the CEO, leading the team. We know we're not actually trying to undermine the senior managers, no, but as per our rules, and of course, some of the issues that maybe we might have raised, it required your presence, required you to respond as the head of ADMARC. As a committee on agriculture, we actually have had some meetings with you in the previous financial year, where we actually visited some ADMARC depots and saw how you had started, that is in procuring maize. As a committee, we were happy that time that you were on the ground as early as May. And it is the wish of this cluster that we should support you, push for funds, and then we see you on the ground very early. You have to be aware that currently as a country, we don't have maize. And we have even gone to the borders to buy and purchase maize. We in the Agriculture Committee know very well that if ADMARC had been fully funded when we still had maize in the country, we could not have landed in the situation that we are in now. And we do not want a repeat of that. We want at least money that has been allocated for maize purchases be remitted in good time and in full. And also as a cluster, we have a feeling that the amount that was announced by the finance minister in the chamber is not enough for this country, because looking at the current price on the market, you have less than 50,000 tons from the amount that is in the budget. So as a cluster, we would want to actually have something comprehensive from you, so that when we go bargaining, it should be from a well-informed position after having heard from you. So, CEO, feel free to tell this cluster anything that you feel should be there for us to push the minister, the ST, and all who matter in the agriculture sector. Thank you very much.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much, honorable co-chairs and honorable members, for inviting us to interact with this cluster. I would want to sincerely apologize that you had to shift this discussion for us because we were not available, but I want to apologize to the committee for that hiccup that happened, but it was not intentional for that to happen. But I will present a presentation of how we used the major activities for the 2024-2025 budget. So the presentation outline basically is on hinging on the major activities for the 2024-25 budget. As you said, Honorable Co-Chair, the challenges we met, the current performance where we are, and I would now go into the 2025-2026 budget as presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance, and the assumptions that we have used on how we are going to use that budget, what will be our focus areas, and the specific what we are going to do on trading, and then I will conclude. In 2025-25 financial year, ADMARC purchased 38,000 metric tons of maize, but in the same period, we distributed 20,000 metric tons of SCGR maize. We also purchased other commodities of totaling 1,200 metric tons. And we also invested in capital items which were lacking in ADMARC. These are the ERP. The ERP is to digitize our operations. Currently, our operations are manual, and it is not healthy for the organization to handle the sums of money that is given to us, and you don't have a system that you're using to handle the transactions that we do. So we are currently in the process of implementing an ERP that will digitize all our market operations and all our operations to ensure that we have visibility of what is happening everywhere at a click of a button. In the plan for 2024-2025, we had budgeted to procure a maize milling plant. I think in our interaction last year also we mentioned it, that we intend to buy a maize milling plant, which we have concluded the procurement process. We are now in the delivery process. And we also budgeted for maize dryers, which we also procured. And the delivery was supposed to be done, just delayed because of some payment challenges on the foreign entity that we are using. And one other major activity that happened in the year was restructuring, which was part of the recruitment that we were doing. But also we did value addition for rice and seed cotton, which we ginned into lint. The key challenges we met in 2024-25, Honorable Co-Chairs and honorable members, you remember in the budget for 2024-2025, ADMARC was allocated a total of 43.5 billion. Out of that money, we only received 10 billion. So all the activities we had planned on 43.5 billion, what has been actually been funded to date, what we have received to date is 10.7 billion. So this non-disbursement of money basically affected our operations, but also we received an additional 26 billion kwacha. This was outside the 43 billion allocation. This was specifically for SGRMs. If you remember, honorable chairs and honorable members, when we presented our budget to this cluster last financial year, we mentioned that the 43 billion did not include maize purchase for the SGR, which was also concurred by the Ministry of Agriculture. And because of that, there was an allocation of 26 billion that was done to ADMARC to purchase 30,000 metric tons of maize. And that is why we mentioned that we purchased 38,000 tons of maize. Out of that 38,000 tons, 8,000 tons was coming from the 43 billion, which is the 10 billion basically which we received, and the 30,000 was coming from the 26 billion which we received from government as part of the SGR. So we faced cash flow problems, as you see, that we had planned on 43 billion, but only got 10.7 billion. And that affected our operations in terms of when we do what, and our presence on the market was felt by the larger community, larger population, because we could not do certain things that people were expecting us to do. If you remember this issue of ADMARC losing a case from the former employees, honorable chairs, co-chairs, and honorable members, ADMARC had a case where former employees who were retrenched 2 years ago took ADMARC to court, and the court awarded these former employees 25.5 billion. This led to garnishing of our accounts, and a total of 6.7 billion was confiscated through the court process. This we had no control. When the court says we have closed your accounts, we are taking whatever is there, we had to comply. And suffice to say, I need to mention, honorable co-chairs and honorable members, that this is a case that emanated from the retrenchment process, and as management, our role was to ensure that we see that case, we manage it to its conclusion, and the outcome was the 25.5 billion which was awarded to the employees. We have so far taken this to government, and the government has committed to take over the case and not ADMARC anymore. Currently, ADMARC is still sitting on 28.4 billion loan balance without supporting stock. This is also a legacy loan balance. We found this loan was a 2017 loan, which ADMARC took in 2017, and it is still outstanding because then ADMARC purchased maize and other commodities. Whatever happens, the maize and the other commodities were not able to cover up the balance, the loans, and the loans are still outstanding. and they are still continuing to attract huge interest. When we reported this loan value last time we met, it was at 24 billion. Now it's at 28 billion because it is continuing to attract interest. I also wish to report, Honorable Chair, co-chairs and honorable members, that government has agreed to take over this loan so that it can free ADMARC books as far as its balance sheet is concerned. Forex challenges, which impacted almost every sector in this country, have impacted also the importation of maize dryers, which I talked about. And our supplier was unable to source Forex on time, and that has delayed the delivery as per plan. I talked about manual-based operations that we currently use, and that is a big challenge which we have now started the implementation of the ERP, which will help us to digitize our operations. Now, we received 10.7 billion. The question is, how did we use the 10.7 billion? This is what we did. We purchased maize, 8,000 metric tons with 3.4 billion. In the budget, we also purchased paddy. This is the rice, 757 metric tons, some sesame, some soya beans and beans, seed cotton. So we also used some money for production. Production meaning in our budget for 2024-2025, we had planned to do production on 2,000 hectares of land to produce maize and other commodities. We have only managed to do 67 hectares other than the 2,000 hectares we planned because we couldn't have enough funding for that. So 4.7 billion was used to buy commodities, and the 0.6 billion was used for production, and the 0.8 billion was used for capex, and the 4.6 billion used for administration costs. This includes salaries and the distribution cost of SGR maize, which we have been doing for the last 5 months. An update on restructuring. ADMARC, as I mentioned, honorable co-chairs and other members completed the restructuring process and recruitment of staff in almost all positions as per the new structure. We faced challenges that we employed staff and refused to come because of current salaries that were applicable that time. We went to government to ask for a slight adjustment so that we can attract people. I wish to report that government listened, and on 1st January, our salaries were restructured so that we can get correct people in the right positions so that they can do what we expect them to do. And the effect of this restructuring is, as I mentioned, it's coming from the 100% retrenchment that ADMARC did on 31st January 2023. Before the retrenchment, if you remember, on 30th August, the Ministry of Agriculture announced the closure of ADMARC, and the skeleton staff was left to oversee the implementation of the activities of ADMARC. With these developments, the retrenched staff felt aggravated and sought the intervention of the court in both Blantyre and Mzuzu IRC registries, respectively. So, 2 cases we've been following, one in Mzuzu, one in Blantyre. The Industrial Relations Court in Blantyre was for unfair dismissal and unfair labor practices. This is the case which the court eventually awarded 25.5 billion. The Mzuzu case was for skeleton staff who are looking for payment of overtime allowances during the time the people were working as skeleton staff. That case is still live in court. We are waiting for a ruling and judgment. It's not yet disposed of. As I mentioned, on the 15th November, the Blantyre Industrial Relations Court found ADMARC liable for both unfair dismissal and unfair labor practices, and a total award of 25 billion was done. ADMARC is appealing the judgment. As I said, now this case is being handled by government, by the Office of the Attorney General. I mentioned about the 6.7 billion, which was garnished and collected from our accounts. And settling this judgment date would adversely affect ADMARC operations. And that is why we are relying on government to take it over, so that in case the amount still remains 25 billion, it should not come from the coffers of ADMARC, but from government. And government has committed to take over the case, as currently it is being handled by the Office of the Attorney General. The Zuzu case is still active, and we still pursuing it to its logical conclusion. And once the case has been concluded, we shall also report to the committee. Honorable co-chairs and honorable members, allow me now to go into the 2025-2026 planned budget and how we intend to use the budget that has been allocated to ADMARC. ADMARC has on its structure 1,565 employees, and we intend to maintain that structure at 1,500. We are coming from a structure which had 4,063 people. We believe with 1,500 in the permanent structure, it is enough to run the institution. Of course, we have a few changes that we are proposing, which might increase that, but to still below 2,000. ADMARC will still maintain its 240 commercial markets and 119 social markets. This makes total markets for ADMARC to 359. ADMARC will also, government will pay the ADMARC debt, the 28.4 billion, which I mentioned, by June and September when they become due. And the government funding for the 2025 and 26 budget allocation will come on time to enable ADMARC implement its planned activities for the financial year. We hope will not have a repeat of what happened in the ending financial year, where we were allocated 43 billion and only ended up getting 10.7 billion. So with the 53 billion that has been allocated, 53.1 billion that has been allocated to ADMARC, we still maintain our 3 focus areas. So the focus areas are still 3. These are for the commercial function of ADMARC. These are agriculture production, agriculture trading, and value addition of the commodities that we buy. And in addition to that, ADMARC will always be involved in the social function, where we purchase SGRMAs for government and the distribution for the sale of the same for price stabilization, using all our 359 markets across the country. This is one major task which we are proud of to do, and we will do it with all our capacity and might. In agriculture production, we would intend to do both irrigated and rain-fed agriculture. ADMARC has 2 farms in Mangochi. One is 108 hectares, the other one is 600 hectares in Mangochi, in the Katuli area. We intend to do irrigation on 130 hectares, and we also plan to do 2,000 hectares for rain-fed, with an expected production of 5,600 metric tons. This will create 136 permanent jobs. That is why I said we might increase from the 1,565 with that 136, but we'll also engage 2,500 casual laborers to help us do the production. This is going to cost us 7.8 billion, including salaries, operational costs, and capital expenditure of about 1.5 billion. On agriculture commodity purchase, agriculture commodity and input purchase and trading, this is what everyone knows ADMARC to do, where we buy commodities, we sell commodities.
We have two officials who have just walked in. If they could self-introduce themselves.
Morning, I'm Chimwemwe Koswe from the Ministry of Agriculture. Accept our apologies. We received a message that we were supposed to come at 11, but we just got information that the meeting started earlier than 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Your position as Minister of Agriculture?
I'm Chief Economist.
Yes.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Mphatso Chiwewe from the Ministry of Agriculture. I also work as a Chief Economist. Thank you.
You're going to go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chairs and Honorable Members. As I was mentioning, our second focus area, which is the commodity, agricultural commodity import purchase and trading, ADMARC has planned to buy 65,000 metric tons of commercial crops. These are beans, soya, paddy, which is rice, groundnuts, and of course maize. And we also plan to sell and to start selling fertilizers. So with this, we have planned to sell 60,000 metric tons of fertilizers on consignment arrangements with suppliers. We have had discussions with suppliers who are intending to give us 60,000 metric tons of fertilizer without us paying upfront, but we will pay them after we have sold the fertilizers. What we want to do is to ensure that fertilizers are available to farmers on time, and we have finalized the discussions with the suppliers to give us the fertilizers at relatively better prices so that we can supply to farmers in time. This will be done through our 240 markets and 119 social markets. You see, Honorable Co-Chairs and Honorable Members here, that I haven't mentioned yet the SGR maize purchase, which is in the 60 billion that was mentioned. I will mention it in the specific slide. So the maize which we are buying here in the commercial part of the commercial crops is the maize that we are going to do milling into flour. The maize that we're going to buy as the maize for sale as SGR is what is going to be in the 60 billion, which was part of the budget. In value addition, ADMARC plans to diversify and increase value addition initiatives to some of the commodities that will be purchased, like rice, groundnuts, dairy, cotton, and maize milling. So the value addition budget is at 15 billion plus 800 million, which is capex. Honorable Co-Chairs and Honorable Members, I mentioned about the 60 billion. In the budget presentation by the Minister of Finance, he specifically mentioned that ADMARC has been allocated 53.1 billion for capital injection or capitalization of ADMARC. This is on paragraph number 84 of the Minister's statement. And 60 billion has been allocated to ADMARC for purchasing of SGR maize in time from farmers. With this amount, ADMARC plans to buy 50,000 metric tons of SGR maize across the country at favorable prices from farmers. So we believe that this is an amount that will help us to go into the market early, that will help us to
Just a correction, sir. Let me take you back to the 60 billion kwacha. You are saying 60 billion kwacha in the budget of purchasing. What did the minister say? The 60 billion has been allocated specifically to ADMARC?
Oh, it's hanging. No, let him. He's understanding. Let's get him.
I wanted to answer the same, to say how we understood it. Yeah. So if you read on the paragraph 84, it talks about ADMARC. When you read on paragraph 90, it is hanging. So we basically now rely on your wisdom as a committee to help us clear this, because as it is, paragraph 84, it talks about, specifically it mentions ADMARC because it is funding to ADMARC, and it is that paragraph talking about that. When you go to paragraph 90, it is hanging, it just talks about ADMARC 53.1 billion, then maize purchases 60 billion. So we basically rely on your wisdom to help us manage that confusion, if I'm to call it, Chair.
No, thank you so much. Fortunately, we have officials from Ministry of Agriculture, because that funding comes through the vote on Ministry of Agriculture. So before we make a decision as a cluster, we will also have to get the wisdom of Ministry of Agriculture to say it is under your vote. How did you plan it? So they will shed in some more light later on. Then we shall take it up from there as a cluster. Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chair and Honorable members. It was indeed a challenge when you read the statement for us also, but since we mentioned we needed to plan for it, we'll be glad if it is allocated to ADMARC, because it means we'll be able to buy the commodities or the maize direct from farmers. If it is not, it means ADMARC will not be able to buy that amount of maize direct from farmers. That means we'll only be able to buy maize within the 53 billion, which is just commercial maize, not for onward sale to farmers. And that I needed to emphasize and clear, honorable co-chairs and honorable members. So this is the outline of how we intend to operate. Purchasing of 65,000 metric tons of commercial commodities, trade in 60,000 metric tons of consignment fertilizer, processing and grading of value addition of 15 billion, and a production cost of 6.3 billion. So in total, this is how much we are expecting to spend. We're expecting to spend 165 billion. Now, you will see that what we've been allocated is 53 billion, but here we're talking about 165 billion because we are looking at about 80 billion of fertilizer that we don't need cash. We don't need to put up cash in advance. We only pay back after we have sold the fertilizers. In trading, we are going to purchase 115,000 metric tons of various commodities, both commercial and social. You see now we had included the maize at the 50,000 metric tons of maize that we mentioned, and that's why you see 70,000 metric tons there, because our commercial maize we are looking at 20,000 metric tons, and the SGR maize we had planned at 50,000 metric tons. If that is not included, that means the 115,000 metric tons of commodities would drop by 50,000, and we plan to buy beans, 5,000 metric tons. We plan to buy soya, 12,000 metric tons. We plan to buy paddy, which is rice, 6,100 metric tons. We plan to buy groundnuts, 6,100 metric tons. Pigeon peas, 6,000 tons, and cotton, 10,000 tons. This, honorable co-chairs and honorable members, I need to mention that most of these crops and commodities that we intend to buy, we have already identified markets for them. And actually the markets we are finding are demanding more than what we are planning to buy here. I will just mention beans, for example. There's a market in South Africa that is looking for 6,000 metric tons of beans. And we can only, with the money that has been allocated, we can only do 5,000 tons. There's a market in India that is looking for 120,000 tons of pigeon peas. And with this budget, we can only do about 6,000 metric tons of pigeon peas. 3,000 tons of 6,000 tons of pigeon peas. So foreign market of our commodities is huge. We need to start supplying these commodities to the foreign markets, and we need to start buying these commodities from our farmers. The more we buy from our farmers, we are encouraging our farmers to produce more, and we are going to get these buyers also to start trusting us as a country that can supply these commodities. So out of the 65,000 metric tons of commodities that we are going to buy, about 63,000 will be sold. You see there's a difference there of about 2,000 tons. The difference comes in because when you are processing the commodities, there's always grading losses that you incur, and you don't buy 20 tons and sell 20 tons. If you grade, you have to lose out something. So that we have applied applicable losses in terms of grading, weight losses, and all that. We intend to sell 452 metric tons of winter crops and rain-fed of 5,194 from the 5,500 that we're going to be produced, and 59,800 of the 60,000 metric tons of fertilizer will be sold within the year. And that should be able to give us a total monetary value of 240 billion if we can do all that. So, in summary, what does that mean? After doing all that, we expect to make a 240 billion revenue, cost of sales 197 billion. We expect to make a gross profit of 42 billion. And if we minus operating administrative expenses and all other expenses, we are going to make an operating earnings or profit of 1.8 billion. That is what we plan to do. So this year, ADMARC is going back to profitability. For the last few years, or 15 years and or so, ADMARC has been posting losses. We have plans to get ADMARC back into profitability starting this coming financial year, on condition that we get funded fully what we have been promised, but also we get approvals to borrow, because we need to borrow more money for us to be able to do this operation. So ADMARC will make a profit, an operating profit of 1.8 billion and a net profit of 6 billion, and end up with 110 billion cash for trading in the coming year. So why are we ending with 6.8 billion? Accountants have fair value gains, which we normally do. That is why I would rather focus on the 1.8 billion as the real profit that we are going to make. The other one is fair value gains for various items that we have. CapEx requirement. We have budgeted 8.6 billion of CapEx, which includes civil works for the maize milling plant, which we are implementing starting immediately. We plan to buy tractors and other farming equipment, but also packaging machines for our commodities. You see that most of the commodities that we have, like rice, for example, needs to be packaged into proper packets for it to be available in supermarkets. We have a packaging equipment that is manual. We have plans to buy an automated packaging machine to be able to package our rice. Our intention, honorable co-chairs and honorable members, is this coming financial year, you should be able to find ADMARC rice and ADMARC flour in the supermarkets. And it is our commitment that this should happen. So, what is our funding requirement? Our funding requirement, this now summarizes our funding requirement and the budget. On crop purchases, ADMARC requires 86 billion. On direct expenses, 21 billion. on crop production 6 billion, and administrative expenses of 40 billion, and a capex of 8.6 billion, a total of 163 billion. How is this going to be funded? We're still maintaining the hope that we are going to still be funded the balance of the 43.5 billion that we were promised, and if we are funded that, we pay off whatever we are owing a lot of people now, including the commitments that we've done, we'll be able to remain with a positive cash balance in our cash flow of 14.6 billion, which will take over into the coming financial year, and we have planned to borrow 95.6 billion from our commercial banks with support from government, and the government financing that has been allocated in the budget, 53.1 billion, that will come to will be able to cover the 163 billion that we need for the financial year. So the 95 billion that we plan to borrow will cost us 13 billion, but we have factored that into the accounting so that even the 1.8 billion is taken into account that financing cost of 13 billion. If we were to get that 95 billion elsewhere, it will throw away that 13 billion and increase the profitability from 1.8 maybe to around 15 billion thereabout. Honorable co-chairs and honorable members, that marks the end of my presentation on the 2025-2026 budget, and there are some highlights of how we utilized the 2024 and 2025 budget. Thank you, honorable co-chairs and honorable members.
If you could go back to your last slide, yeah, on the crop purchases there. You are saying crop purchases 86 billion. What is your requirement for maize purchases? That's the interest of us as members of parliament first. Maize purchases, what are your requirements? You have just generalized.
Yes. So in the 53 billion that was announced, so that includes, if you remember, I had a slide. Let me go back to this slide. I had this slide. So total maize purchase is 70,000 tons. Of that, 20,000 is commercial maize, which will be used to mill flour, and 50,000 was coming from the hanging 60 billion. So if the 60 billion hanging is not included, so in total, the total maize purchase is coming to around 21 billion on the 20,000 tons. The 60 billion is the one that is giving us 50,000 tons.
If you were to buy maize from farmers from your ADMARC markets across the country, how much money do you want?
So, Chair, if we are to buy maize, I want to understand your question clearly.
Yes.
If we are to buy maize, how much money do we need?
When we say buying maize, we want you opening ADMARC markets.
Yes.
And buying from ADMARC markets.
Yes.
And exhausting the maize that farmers will grow this year.
Yes.
How much money do you want?
Okay.
How that maize is going to be used, that is a discussion for a later time. But if you were to buy the maize that farmers have grown without them losing to vendors, how much money do you need?
Yeah. Supplementary before you answer. If we assume that you have been allocated 60 billion kwacha, is that enough for ADMARC in this coming season of buying maize? If it's not enough, how much additional do you need?
And to understand is maize, not crops.
Yeah.
There you are talking of crops. Yeah. We are talking of maize. So we should zero in on maize, not crops.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chair. I have now understood the question. No, you're right. Let me still start answering the question from how we are going to use the maize. Allow me to do that, Honorable Co-Chair and honorable members. ADMARC buys two types of maize. Maize for commercial, which is for flour, which we still also buy from farmers, and maize for SGR, which we sell back to the to the public as part of the price stabilization. Now, coming back to your question in terms of how much maize do we need, can we buy, or do we need to buy to perform those two functions? According to our budget, we have budgeted 20,000 metric tons of maize for commercial. So I'll leave that aside. So 20,000 metric tons of maize. This maize will buy from the farmers, but will not sell back to the farmers, as maize will sell back to the people as flour. But for us to sell maize to farmers, we need to look at the demand. If ADMARC is to open all its 359 markets and sell maize in those markets, first of all, buy maize and sell maize. That's why I said we need to answer that question from the use of that maize. So if we are to buy maize, that will make that maize available to people throughout the lean season, which is now no longer 3 months, but 6 months, because we start selling maize now in October up to somewhere around March or April, end of March or somewhere in April. So if you calculate, that's 6 months. In the 359 markets, if we are to sell maize continuously so that people can have access to maize, we need not less than 250,000 metric tons of maize. Anything less than 250,000 metric tons of maize, Honorable Co-Chair and honorable members, it means we'll have maize, yes, but will not be available all the time in all ADMARC markets, and there will be struggle to get maize to this market and that market from one moment to another, because the maize is not available, is not enough. Anything less than 250,000 for price stabilization will mean maize is not available. So the 250,000, how I've calculated that, actually is not, if you were to look at 250,000 metric tons to distribute in the 359 markets, it means only 690 tons per market. And that is for 6 months, which means for each month, each market should be selling not more than 116 tons. And 116 tons is 2,000 bags for a month, which means 2,300 bags per month. If we are to open that market for 25 days, it should only sell 92 bags a day. That means we'll have 92 bags available for each market every day of the working days for 6 months. That would mean we have flooded the markets with maize. Otherwise, anything less than that, we shouldn't talk about flooding markets with maize. Thank you, Chair.
How much that 250?
So 250,000 tons is 300 billion. Yeah.
Chair, supplementary. Supplementary. Diffuse Safus. Thank you. Okay. Supplementary quickly. So with this new information, maybe the ADMARC needs to confirm whether they have attempted to submit to Treasury that requirement of 300 billion to meet 250,000 metric tons. That's the question. Have they attempted, and what has been the response? Thank you.
Yes, that's the supplementary question. Our interest as members of parliament is that one of 250,000 metric tons. That when you buy, it will be available in ADMARC markets across the country not the one you are going to use for maize flour making. That is your own commercial business. But our interest is, do our ADMARC markets in our constituencies, every constituency, have maize? That's where our interest is.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable co-chairs, and a very good question indeed from the Honorable member. When we buy maize for resale, and the Chair, you have rightly separated the commercial maize for flour and for sale, for price stabilization. When we buy maize for resale for price stabilization, it is SGR maize, which is for strategic grain reserve. This maize is bought either by ADMARC or by NFRA. So what I talked about here is what ADMARC should be allocated out of all the purchases of maize for us to make maize available in the market. So when it comes to the SGR planning of how much maize we need to buy for SGR, it is not in the domain of ADMARC. ADMARC only comes in to buy the maize and sells the maize, but the SGR planning is in the Ministry of Agriculture. So we are only told to say there's an amount of so much that is supposed to be used to buy SGR maize, and out of this, ADMARC has been allocated so much, you go and buy SGR maize, and we buy that SGR maize and keep it safe. When that SGR maize is supposed to be sold, we also wait for the Ministry of Agriculture, because it is now government maize. It is actually not ADMARC maize, it is government maize. We wait for the ministry through the SGR committee that meets at the ministry to allocate a tonnage to ADMARC to sell. That is why, Honorable Co-Chairs and Honorable Members, you see that we reported that in this year's budget, we bought 30,000 metric tons of maize from the 26 billion that we allocated from SGR maize purchases. But what was allocated to us through the committees, the committee that meets to look at the distribution of this maize, we were allocated 30,000 tons, which means the 20,000 tons went for other purposes. So if you ask me how much, whether we have gone to Treasury to ask for that, at SGR level, we are an agent of government, and what I'm mentioning here is looking at the requirement and the demand from the market, because by the end of the day, ADMARC is requested to distribute maize to people out there when there's demand, but also to buy maize out there from farmers whenever people are harvesting. So for us to buy that maize, we rely on funding from the SGR, which is not controlled by ADMARC, but controlled by the Ministry of Agriculture. Thank you very much, Chair.
You come in before matching, I ask a question. The 60 billion, to who is it allocated to? And can you take it up from where he has left?
Thank you, Chair. The 60 billion, part of it will go to NFRA and part of it will go to ADMARC.
Talking to a cluster that is going to produce a report, we don't use part of it, not part of it. How much money in figures, Bwana?
At the moment, the decision has not yet been made in terms of how much exactly. But suffice to say that currently what we know is part of it will go to ADMARC and part of it will go to NFRA. But
that budget has come to Parliament, and Malawians are waiting to hear. When we say budget has been passed, Malawians say, okay, the budget has been passed. It will be passed with part of it, part of it. People will not to know. The minister said 60 billion has been allocated for maize purchases. How much is for ADMARC and how much is for NFRA? Now, how does ADMARC plan? Or how does NFRA plan? If they don't even know how much you have allocated them, you are making their lives very difficult.
Chair, supplement you. Back to their presentation. They talked about 95 billion borrowing, and In the light of this, that we do not know what is allocated to them, how are they planning? How are they budgeting for 95 billion? If they don't know the exact figures coming from the ministry.
Supplementary again on that one, Chair. It seems like from the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Chair, they have brought and finished the product. So up to this point, Honorable Chair, maybe we wait up until they are clear on their allocations. But as members of Parliament, we will look foolish because we don't know the exact figures and we don't know how to lobby for which organization. So it will be very difficult for us. Let them finish the budget, then we'll discuss afterwards. I submit, Honorable Chair.
It's not difficult just even for us as members of Parliament, even for all of us, even ADMARC. How do they go back to plan?
Okay, Chair, let me request that I get out and consult on the amount. Yeah, I'll come back.
Our decision.
The Machinga East ask you a question. We go for a 10-minute health break as we wait for them to bring the response, and we shall take it up from there.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson. My first question, Honorable Chair, is to do with the CAPEX. The 2014-2025 budget, they managed to procure the CAPEX they are talking about. And the 2025-2026 budget, again, they are looking for 800 million for the CAPEX. I just wanted them to at least give me more information on how things are, like the CAPEX they procured last time was not enough, or what is really are we procuring. The second question, Honorable Chair, is coming from where they have indicated that they have indicated three scenarios for the committee. The first one is that they are having a case to do with the skeleton staff, which is with Industrial Relations Court, and the issue of the former employees, where the court demanded 25.5 billion, and there is a loan which they are saying is outdated loan of 28.4 billion, and they have indicated that the government is ready to take over the loan. But if you go to their last presentation, they are also proposing that they might go and search for loans, and they are pegging it at 95 billion. So there is 28 billion they are failing to repay, and they are saying government will take over. How sure will the committee be that even if they get this loan of 95 billion, ADMARC will be able to repay that loan? My last question, Honorable Chairperson, is that you know, Honorable Chair, that the understanding of the members of Parliament, or our fears, is to say that ADMARC is having more issues and serious cases. Even if we allocate resources to them, but they will end up of not fulfilling what they have planned, because they have unfinished issues, and I think multitude of them. So do you please give them a chance, Honorable Chair, to confirm that apart from the three cases they have put forward to the cluster committee, they have other cases as well that will hinder their operations within the year. Honorable Chair, at a certain point, ADMARC planned to be, I think last year, there was an attempt to also sell the AIP fertilizer. And I know some of the ADMARC markets, they did not allow their markets to be used with by the AIP people, because they themselves, they wanted to do the same business. Now what I'm hearing this year is that they will not do the AIP one. Now they have engaged the commercial suppliers, the private sector, that they will be, they have an agreement that they should be given a chance also to sell fertilizer. Which is which? Are they going to go on the private sector way, or still they have that feeling of them being engaged in the AIP fertilizer arrangement? I submit, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Bwana CEO, you tackle those questions together with the response from the Ministry of Agriculture when members start asking other questions, but keep the questions from the Honorable Member. Let's go for a 10-minute health break. Let Minister of Agriculture consult. Then after 10 minutes, let's come back. We shall start from there. Thank you so much.
Agriculture, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We consulted, and what we've been told is that 20 billion will go to ADMARC, 40 billion will go to NFRA. Regards the second question, in terms of funding, is the Ministry of Finance that is responsible. Yeah. So the Ministry of Finance is the better placed to provide a response as to whether they will finalize the entire funding to ADMARC this month end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We have heard what our officials from Ministry of Agriculture have said. They say the ministry has allocated the amount where 40 billion for NFRA, 20 billion for ADMARC, according to the response that they've gotten from their superiors at the ministry. And before CEO responds to those questions that were asked before we went for health break, honorable members, do you have any say on what the officials from agriculture have brought before us? Yes, we'll start with the Palombe North, then Machinga East, then you finish with the Mangoji Southwest. In that order, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In the light of what the officials from Ministry of Agriculture has said, my immediate reaction to that is the funds are being misplaced. Because what we wanted was the 60 billion, all of it, for ADMARC. And for you to say 40 billion goes to NRFA, then 20 billion goes to ADMARC to purchase the maize, which we all need, I think it's unfortunate. We need to revisit that. Thank you so much, Chair.
Honorable Chair, I would want to appreciate the reasons on how the ministry has come up with that allocation. So Parliament being a house of records, I would want to ask your office chair to ask them to give this cluster at least in writing with reasons. They might have good reasons, but in the absence of those reasons, it will be very difficult for me to get convinced. So unless they inform us and we look on those reasons, then and then we can make an informed decisions. But verbally, we don't work verbally here. Honorable Chair, may you ask your office to ask them to provide with those written response reasons to the cluster committee. I submit, Honorable Chairperson.
Mangochi Southwest, you have the floor. Chair, now in the light of what we have been told, my question now is this ADMARC now a government institution that we can derive value from it? It looks like we are slowly killing ADMARC, killing it slowly. You give it some medication. Is like, you know, when you are suffering from cancer, your terminal illness, they will try to lessen the suffering by giving you this medication, so that you can be seen to be alive, but we know that you are dying. Can we have a policy direction to say ADMARC no more, now we are going for NFRA? Because we have these 359 ADMARC depots, NFRA even doesn't have a single depot. Doesn't have a single depot. What is the problem? Is the problem these officers in front of us? If it is these officers, let us take a decision. Let us relieve them. Let them go elsewhere. What is the problem? Why are we now taking what was supposed to go to ADMARC and we are taking it to NFRA? That's the question that I would want to pose to you, our co-chairs, to navigate through, so that the Mangochi Southwest is comfortably assured of why we should be maintaining ADMARC as it were. Thank you very much.
And it's not just this year. Last year, this cluster made the recommendation that ADMARC should be allocated the money. The Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Agriculture did quite the opposite. They did not follow what was in the recommendation that we presented in Parliament. Otherwise, we may even just be wasting our time as a cluster. They don't take the recommendations that come from the cluster. And this year, officials from agriculture, go and tell whoever you are going to tell there, whether it's the PS, go and tell him that we are ready to meet even HE as a cluster. Because what you are doing is not helping this country at all. Maybe you have vested interest somewhere, maybe you want to sabotage government, or we don't know what you are up to.
Chair, Machinga East asked for reasons that have made Ministry of Agriculture come up with this suggestion, come up with this arrangement. So too was Palombe North, and then lastly, Mangochi Southwest, and you too. I also want to echo what you've said, to say Ministry of Agriculture have personal interests in what happens at the NFRA. Let me take you back. I know what happens at the NFRA, where people who have no single bag of maize are allocated contracts to deliver the NFRA. This is what motivates Ministry of Agriculture to continue allocating large amounts of money to NFRA than ADMARC. Because with ADMARC, they are out there in the bush market. And then they buy from real farmers. Whilst NFRA encourages vendors to trample upon our people in the constituencies, give them bad prices, and then they resell at NFRA at very competitive rates per kilogram. And if we want to correct things in this country, let's call a spade by its name. People at Ministry of Agriculture have personal interests. That's why they push large chunks of money. So as a cluster, we need to sit down and make everything known to people that we are not happy with what they've done. And as a cluster, we are the owners of the budget as members of Parliament.
In fact, Honorable
Yes.
Chair, I think it's of no use even proceeding without the PS here.
Yeah.
Let the PS of Agriculture come here and answer these questions. We shouldn't be wasting our time. We're here for serious business.
Are they around?
Find the way of having the PS here, sir, today. Yeah.
I want to add that we have the budget director as well, I submit.
Secretariat call for the budget director. Officials from Ministry of Agriculture bring the PS here today, and we're here waiting for him. Yeah. Otherwise, we are not here to make jokes. We're representing people who are suffering from hunger, and this is a deliberate, it's a making of your own. You are doing it just deliberately. Call the PS and Secretariat call the budget director to come. Adjourned. We have not closed. No. We are waiting for those officials to appear.